Now we come to the final Mishnah that discusses when one was allowed or not allowed to use the bamot, to use private mizbachot. So Mishnah in Zevachim Perek Yudalad Mishnah Chet says, Ba'u Yerushalayim. So now the Mishkan comes to Yerushalayim. Right, and at this point, it is no longer a Mishkan. It is actually now the Beit HaMikdash that Shlomo HaMelech built, and there, of course, is Yerushalayim. And at this point, Ne'esru HaBamot, the private mizbachot that a person could build in his backyard, or wherever he wanted to, were now forbidden. V'lo haya lahem od heter, the Mishnah tells us. They were no longer allowed ever again. And until this day, we no longer offer korbanot on private mizbachot. We will not offer korbanot until we have a Beit HaMikdash. And then the Mishnah tells us, V'hi haita nachala. This Beit HaMikdash is what we call nachala, and that is a reference, as we saw a couple Mishnayot earlier, to the psukim in Dvarim Perek Yud Bet, when Hashem tells Bnei Yisrael, or when Moshe actually tells Bnei Yisrael about their entry to the land. Down here on Pasuk Tet, Moshe says, Ki lovatem ad ata el hamenucha v'el hanachala asher Hashem Elokecha noten lach. You have not yet come to the resting place and the inheritance that Hashem has given you. And we saw 2 Mishnayot ago that Menucha was a reference to Mishkan Shiloh, where the Mishkan stayed for 369 years. And the Mishnah now is telling us that Nachala is a reference to the Beit HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, that it was a more permanent location for Hashem's home. The first Beit HaMikdash, built by Shlomo, lasted for 410 years. And unlike the Mishkan, it had not only permanent walls, but it had also a permanent roof on top of it, and that was therefore considered to be a much more lasting place for Hashem. Unfortunately, of course, it did not last. It was rebuilt once, and we hope it will be rebuilt again. The Mishnah then goes into its familiar listing of which korbanot could be eaten where, and we are told, Kodshei Kodashim, Ne'echalim Lifnim Min HaKilayim, the holier korbanot could be eaten Lifnim Min HaKlaim. They could be eaten within the curtains. Now, at this point, there are no curtains because we have walls everywhere, but the Mishnah, in its typical style, keeps the same phrasing that it's used for the previous Mishnayot, and what this means is that the holier korbanot could be eaten within the walls that made up the courtyard of the Beit HaMikdash. Just to get an understanding of Lifnim Min HaKlaim by the Beit HaMikdash, this is a rendering of really Bayit Sheni, second Beit HaMikdash. You see here where the magnifying glass is. This is the Beit HaMikdash, and the area around it is the courtyard. And what makes the courtyard, of course, are these walls. So as I said, these are not Klaim anymore. These are not actually curtains, because by the Beit HaMikdash we have a more permanent structure. But these walls form the courtyard, actually courtyards. Here's the inner courtyard, and here's the larger Ezrat Nashim outer courtyard of the Beit HaMikdash complex. And when we say certain korbanot have to be eaten lifnim min haklaim by the Beit HaMikdash, it means that they get eaten anywhere within those walls. And finally, the Mishnah concludes, Kadashim kalim u'maser sheni lifnim min hachoma, that the lighter korbanot, meaning individual korbanot shlamim, and Maser Sheni, the 1/10 of a farmer's produce that he would bring to Yerushalayim and eat there in years 1, 2, 4, and 5 of every Shemitah cycle, those could be eaten lifnim min hachoma, within the walls, meaning the walls of the old city of Yerushalayim. To get a sense of what it meant to eat korbanot shlamim or Maser Sheni within the walls of Yerushalayim during the time of the Beit HaMikdash, let's just take a look at the current Old City and see where the Old City was. So the current Old City, you see the quarters and you see Har Moriah. So if you follow the hand, it goes along here. This is currently the wall of the Old City, going around here, out to here, around the Islamic quarter, and through the Christian quarter, and this is the side that leads off to the modern new city of Yerushalayim. Now, the fact is, most of the current old city is not that old. Migdal David, the Tower of David near the Jaffa Gate near Shar Yafo, has a crescent on top. It was built by Muslims in the 1500s, which for Yerushalayim is fairly young. In fact, most of the old city was down in this area where it says Ir David, down near the bottom where it says Silwan, or Shiloach. This was really the ancient old city of Yerushalayim, and that's where you would go if you were eating a korban, as long as you were within those walls. Just to get a sense from the Kotel perspective, we're going to move in front of the Kotel, and you see some of this is images that have been made, computer images, not actual photos. We're going to go down, and now we're standing in front of the Kotel. So let's turn around a little bit. There's the Kotel. If you're facing the Kotel, you would then keep turning to your right and go to what we call Shar Ashpot, the dung gate, the gate you enter most directly to get to the Kotel. And then if you were to head out through that gate, we're not going to have an actual picture of the gate over here, but we're heading now basically out where the gate is. And you see there's the hills ahead of us, the Harei Yehuda ahead of us, and ultimately what happens here is we come to a little bit of a cliff, and down deep in the valley, right, is the current Arab village of Silwan. But that is where Ir David was. That was where the Jews lived at that time. And we can turn around now again and see where we are relative to the Kotel. Right, we're now right outside Har Habayit. The Jews live below. You can see our slope. So if we were coming from down below, that we would be in the ancient old city of Yerushalayim, and that's where we would eat korbanot shlamim, and that's where we would eat our Maser Sheni.